Yeah, we're ready.
Sorry.
Ready? Great. Well, we'll just hand it right over to Adrian and Donnie, who are here today for the workshop. So Adrian, I'll hand it right over to you.
We got a meeting.
What do you want me to do here? Next meeting? Yeah. Okay. Sure. All right. Done. Speaker here. Good. Okay. I guess I'll. Good morning, Mayor and Council. As you're aware, I'm Adrian Slatt, Director of the City's Planning and Development Department. We asked for this time with you today with the intention of helping Council to better understand at a high level the regulatory framework, authorities, resources, and processes related to planning and development in the city, as well as touch on recent activity and some accomplishments. So before we get going, I'll start with some introductions and then we'll do a brief overview of the planning and development regulatory framework, some review of authorities, resourcing and responsibilities. We'll go over the P&D mid-range business plan at a high level. Again, go over some of the major projects and development related statistics over the past year or two, and then open the floor to discuss any challenges or opportunities that we may have. Following the presentation, time permitting, we'll walk through the planning and development process in greater detail. And then on May 16, we'll likely be back. Well, we will be back, but it'll likely the engineering 101 side of things. So an engineering overview of the engineering department, their authorities, responsibilities, processes, etc. So the Planning and Development Department has 4 branches. With us online today are Scott Hubley, he's the Manager of Building Inspection Services, Colin Kriviak, the Development Branch Manager, Christina Peter, Planning Branch Manager, and Donna Sleen, Financial Officer and Administrative Officer Supervisor. And because we work so closely together with engineering services, we also have Donnie George here, Director of Engineering, Tim Saunders, Manager of Capital Projects Office, Michaela Hanley, Manager of Infrastructure Planning and Asset Management, Jonathan Reed, Manager of Development Engineering, and Dean Schick, Manager of Transportation.
I will also add that we have additional staff from engineering as well. Faisal Kindly, who's working with Deans on the road assets. And also we have Tanya Hines from Infrastructure Planning and Asset Management, and also Lorraine Del Blanco from Asset Management.
Anybody working today?
So
We're all out.
So the Planning and Development Department, I failed to mention that Planning and Development Department has 31 FTEs and 3 part-time staff. Among the managers and myself, over 100 years of experience in municipal governance. So it's a pretty sound group. And Donnie's group, I don't know the years, but 32 FTEs, 30 temporary.
300 some years.
And 4 engineering students as well.
Enough?
Wow. 4 engineering.
Both your departments.
Yeah, we have a great bunch there.
It's always lean. If you look at some of the regional municipalities and their staffing levels per capita, I think we're lean.
Both side?
We're lean. Yeah. So I'll kick it off with just an overview of the regulatory framework. So going from a global or provincial kind of regulation is the foundation, and then building up and building upon that and consistent with the preceding layers to metropolitan area regulation and citywide policy, sub-area policies, and then sub-areas, portions of sub-areas down to specific buildings. So here we have as the global provincial regulation, the MGA is the foundation of everything that we do. Moving up from the global to a little bit more specific, we have the Edmonton Metropolitan Region Growth Plan, which establishes policy for the city at a regional level, gives us things such as our target densities and infill targets, agricultural preservation policies, things like that. And then on top of that, in consistence with MGA and EMR growth plan, we have the Municipal Development Plan, which is Flourish, which contains a significant amount of policy broadly applicable to the city level. And then we have the Land Use Bylaw, which I think, as you're aware, we're updating currently. So that's an exciting opportunity. The Land Use Bylaw in many ways is responsible for implementation of the MVP. And if you'd ask the city solicitor's office, they will probably tell you that it's the most important document that council approves, because this is the nuts and bolts about how development actually materializes on the ground to many extents. And then continuing to build on those foundational elements, we have area structure plans and area redevelopment plans. So we have one area redevelopment plan, and I think 20 area structure plans, something like that. They provide a general overview of how an area develops, how servicing will occur, transportation networks, etc. As you're aware, council recently approved neighborhood plans, which is the next step of implementation now. So we kind of chose to go down this path of pulling a neighborhood plan out of the area structure plan so that we can have a little bit lower bar of entry for getting area structure plans approved, and then more specificity as development moves closer to actual materialization.
I thought, Adrian, you were going to say neighborhood plans were the most important. now that they're
all pieces of the puzzle. And I guess after that, we have subdivision and condominium regulations, which enable the creation of parcels or legal ownership. And then the Safety Codes Act, which specifies how individual buildings are to be constructed. Again, generally, we have to go with it because there's some bits of it, like the Safety Codes Act is actually almost a global document in the province, right? But going from broader to narrower, that's kind of the overall structure. The city has significant autonomy on some of these levels. So the municipal development plan, the area structure plan, neighborhood plan, land use bylaw. Council has a lot of opportunity to affect regulations and policies within those documents, and little to none in others. So the Municipal Government Act, some of the Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Growth Plan, we have had some influence in that, obviously, but some of it is handed down to us. Condominium regulation, subdivision regulation, Safety Codes Act, those are all things kind of outside of the city's purview. And this is just a kind of another way to kind of think about the process. So again, going from high level to the more specific, starting at your regional plans and policies like your intermunicipal development plan, then your municipal development plan, then your area structure plan and neighborhood plan. So again, you're going from citywide policy to portions of city to portions of that portion of the city, and then your land use bylaw or zoning, as many people refer to it, and then subdivision, and finally down to development construction approvals. So development permits, building permits, development agreements, all those types of things.
Adrian, why do we call it districting instead of zoning? Is that a St. Albert thing?
You know, I don't know.
Okay. Instead of rezone, we redistrict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a land use district. I think it's more common to be called zoning.
Yeah.
But, it's a good question.
It's not a big deal. I just wondering if it was everywhere or if it was something that was unique to us.
Yeah.
So in BC, they call it zoning.
Yeah.
Very strong.
Yeah.
Term zoning there.
And
I was going to say in Alberta, it's mostly redistricting. It's
Is it?
just,
Okay.
yeah, it's just the way it's stated here, but most other places it's zoning.
Essentially, they're interchangeable. So
it's the
Yeah.
same.
if I say to a resident, we're going to rezone, Because they understand that. They don't understand
Yeah,
redistricting.
we do run into that. People get a little confused sometimes when we talk about districts and stuff like that. It's
So Adrian, maybe Mayor Herron's brought up a good point in terms of where does the public get the opportunity to have either notification or input? What level does that usually take place?
yeah. So I'll kind of touch on it in a little bit, but
Oh, okay.
no, you ask questions along the way.
No,
So
Pretty much everything,
the left side,
MDP, area structure plan, neighborhood, well, not neighborhood plan, LUB would require a public hearing.
that's right.
Subdivision does too.
Subdivision does not.
Oh, because you do that.
That's right.
Right, okay.
So intermunicipal development plan, municipal development plan, creation of area structure plans, those are all public hearing. They require the 3 readings. Bylaw, land use bylaw also requires 3 public hearings. That's council public hearing. As Mayor Herron said, the ones on the right end of things. So the development permits, building permits, subdivision, neighborhood plan, those do not. So that will be, I'll touch on it here in a minute or two, but
But lots of opportunity for
lots of
public
opportunity. Yeah,
engagement.
so.
Yes.
And I think the whole purpose of this, after we kind of go through this, we'll fine tune it, but we've identified a kind of, there's just a lack of understanding about these processes and what we do here. And it's rational because nobody's going to spend the time to get into these weeds. But we want to try to use this type of information to come up with even a cheat sheet of the planning and development process and where people can interact and where the decisions have already been made so they don't have expectations and stuff like that. So, Councilor Bermansky.
I just have a quick question. When you're jumping between area structure plan and neighborhood plan, like say the area structure plan was done, a number of years back kind of thing, and then you're changing something in the neighborhood, where's the public input between those 2 areas? I know most of your area structure plans are new areas, but if you could clarify that.
Sure. So I'll just speak to it, and then if Christina wants to correct anything, she can jump on. But so area structure plans, those are approved by council. When a neighborhood plan comes in order for administration to approve a neighborhood plan under this new kind of hierarchy or I guess development approvals structure that we have, administration has to determine that the neighborhood plan is consistent with the area structure plan. If it's not consistent with the area structure plan, then it would have to go back for revision, or the applicant would have to go back and seek an amendment to the area structure plan to enable what they want to do in the neighborhood plan. Does that make sense?
Well, not really. If the plan was done a number of years back, people probably wouldn't even have memory of that.
So I guess we just make our decisions based off of the approved area structure plan.
Okay.
So regardless if it's approved in 1970 or if it was approved last year, a neighborhood plan would have to be consistent with that document. So I think that it might not be in the top of mind of many people, but when we review that application, we make sure that whatever is brought in as the neighborhood plan is consistent with the council approved document. So we're operating within the council approved kind of structure.
Okay, I'll get more details on that later because I'm concerned, like say you have an older neighborhood and there's say like three houses, and then you want to do a condo development for infill and stuff like that. That probably wouldn't be in the in the quite a bit back in time structure plan, but it would be in maybe your municipal development or somewhere else along the line. So that's where my concern comes up.
So like if you're seeing that the area structure plan says residential,
right,
and somebody comes in with a neighborhood plan, I mean, it's pretty context specific.
But if the neighborhood plan was different from the area structure plan, that wouldn't align and you wouldn't,
cannot approve it.
you can't approve it. So it'd have to come to council.
Administration does not have the authority, so it would have to go back to council.
Yeah.
If it was, so let's say the neighborhood was the area structure plan showed a park and then they wanted to come in and do this multi-complex or multi-development that you're talking about.
Right.
We couldn't do it. We would send it back to the applicant and they would have to get the ASP approved by council.
So it would be stopped at ASP level then, is what you're saying?
Well, the ASP exists, but it would be, we would turn it back at the neighborhood plan application level because it's not consistent.
Okay, okay. Thank you then.
Sure. So again, as I noted, and this is, we'll touch on a little bit more of the kind of authorities here. As I said, council has some autonomy over some of the regulatory framework and not others. MGA subdivision regulation, condominium regulation, Safety Codes Act. Those are all provincial documents. And even in the case of the Safety Codes Act, there's more and more momentums towards nationalizing that. So it's not even a provincial. I think that's the direction that it's going from the sound of it, is that it will be more of a national document rather than even a provincial document. We've got the growth plan, which I touched on already, and then we've got the statutory plans, which we already talked about. They require the 3 readings as well as a public hearing. The bylaw also requires the 3 readings in the public hearing. And then council also has the authority over non-statutory plans. They must be approved by a resolution. So some of the non-statutory plans that you might be familiar with include things like the Red Willow Park Master Plan, the Environmental Master Plan, Campbell North Design Guidelines, South Riel or the Henday Business Park now, Industrial Park Design Guidelines. So there's opportunities there for council to really shape kind of the built environment at a deeper level. And then from an administrative process, there's a couple of things that shape things as well. So we have public participation standards. The Planning and Development Department has, I guess, a supplement to the city's public hearing requirements, the public participation standards, to try to ensure that we have good engagement where appropriate. And then we've got things like the area structure plan terms of reference, which explains to our development partners what technical requirements we need when reviewing applications. So again, touched on the 3 readings and a public hearing on the stat plans, and the non-stat plans do not require that. And then outside of the council, there's another body, the Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. They are an independent tribunal within the city established by city council that hears appeals. I want to see appeals. Relating to decisions of the Development Authority regarding development permit applications, enforcement orders issued by the Development Authority, and decisions of the Subdivision Authority regarding subdivision applications. So the board is made of citizens of the city. The decisions of the board are final and cannot be overturned unless the board makes an error in some aspect of law or jurisdiction. And then I think
Adrian,
Yep.
Wes here, just a quick point, and I think it was to the point that Shelley was asking about earlier. If a developer comes in and actually wants to change the land use, redistrict, if you will, the development officer can't do that. A redistricting has to come back to council for approval, and then a requisite public engagement process, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So if you went further down that path, for sure, if somebody wanted to come in and change their districting or zoning, that would for sure have to go through council. That requires a public hearing and 3 readings prior to those changes coming into effect.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. Administrative authorities. So council has delegated a number of authorities to administration. As you're aware, that includes the Neighborhood Plan Authority, which was just approved. This enables administration to ensure that neighborhood plans are consistent with the council approved area structure plans. The delegation subdivision has been given to the Subdivision Authority, which allows administration to approve the legal division of land or property in conformance with the subdivision or condominium regulation, provincial regulations. The development authority has been delegated by council to enable the issuance of development permit decisions consistent with the land use bylaw primarily, as well as other considerations. And then the safety codes officer is delegated through Municipal Affairs and the Alberta Safety Codes Council to administer the Alberta Safety Codes Act through the city's quality management plan, which governs the issuance of permits. And you'll see when we talk a little bit more directly about the building inspection services, the building inspections has answers to the city, but then they also answer to Municipal Affairs through the Alberta Safety Codes Council. So this is just an overview of the org chart. Again, I touched on it, 31 FTEs. Into it, so we have admin and finance. We have 4 FTEs there, a financial officer, and then 3 administrative officers. Their responsibilities are being the primary customer service contact and acting as financial oversight for the department. Annually, they take in roughly 10,000 customer phone calls and 3,000 walk-ins. That dropped a bit, obviously, over the last 2 years. I was actually surprised going over the numbers again. It was almost 1,000. And we were only open for a few months, both years. So some people still like to do things in person. We'll touch on it in a little while, but we do have some green tape initiatives to try to cut down those number of calls and walk-ins, just to make things a little bit more spoon-fed for folks. And then next we have the planning branch. Christina, I don't know if you want to walk through that or.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'll take the next couple of slides here just to brag a little bit about the group that I work with. We have 2 senior planners. Each of them have a specialty, so either current planning and long-range planning. And then we have 5 planners and a planner 2, which is just a technical component within the planning group. About 4 of those 5 planners work exclusively on current planning, so that's responding to development. And then we have Lori as the affordable liaison, housing liaison, and the planning technicians to support not just planning, but all of planning and development, and also supporting other departments. So I guess that's the slide. Maybe we can go on to the next one. Great. So I'll just talk a little bit about each group here. So affordable housing, the affordable housing portfolio within the planning branch focuses on opportunities to improve housing affordability within all of St. Albert. The focus is to ensure that St. Albert has enough housing units to support the various aspects of the housing continuum. And on this, you can see that it's not just about homelessness or emergency shelters. It's also about market housing and making sure that we have enough market housing to support the residents as well. Where community services focuses on the social programming needed to ensure access to the housing continuum, planning focuses on getting the actual units built. This focus includes improving affordability both in the market and non-market housing sector, and this position also plays a key role in implementing the universal accessibility program within the city. The next branch, the next group that we have is a long-range planning group, and long-range planning refers to the policy and plan development undertaken by the branch. This aspect of the department focuses on the high-level goals of the City of St. Albert and proposes ideas how best to implement them. This includes developing policies which follow industry best practice while reflecting the values of the City of St. Albert. They also work with other external agencies to improve awareness about the built form goals within the city. And they also help to ensure the consistency between the statutory plans and the planning applications. So some of our bigger projects within this group were the annexation, the municipal development plan, and they will be the ones working on St. Albert West Area Structure Plan and the DART projects. The current planning group is probably the most staffed, and this is, like I said before, reflects the responses back to the development industry. Current planning is the process of putting the policies and citywide goals into action by facilitating land development. Current planning is highly regulated by the Municipal Government Act, and it brings together the city, the land development industry, the public, and council. Current planners make recommendations to council based upon the already approved municipal development plan, area structure plans, and the land use bylaw. Recommendations rarely deviate from those already approved plans. If a land developer is asking for an exemption to these plans, administration will provide commentary within a council agenda report about the impacts of the change, but generally will ultimately not recommend it. And that is because it deviates from past council decisions and the planning documents already approved. If council would like to approve the change, then council will make a decision that will change these documents. And then from then on, administration will follow those new sets of policies or regulations. Our role in this group is to give council enough information to make an informed decision regarding the application in front of them. And then finally, we've got our planning technicians. The planning technicians support all of planning and development and work closely with assessment, corporate GIS, and engineering. They provide the technical mapping and statistical expertise for all of the planning and development applications. They are also the corporate owners of the city's parcel database and ensure its accuracy. And they've also been instrumental in developing the new Prospero Tempest software. This software provides and enables online e-permitting, application file management, and integration with the financial software of the city. Technicians also provide all statistical and mapping data for the department and support us with addressing and naming as well. And I think now it's on to the development branch.
Thank you, Christina. I will be speaking to the next few slides and specifically about the development branch within the Planning and Development Department. The first slide shows that the development branch consists of myself, the manager, and 4 development officers. Responsibilities of the development branch include all development permit decisions, which does include signed permits as well, compliance certificate reviews, SDAB appeals, land use bylaw enforcement, LUB updates and amendments. We respond to council inquiries, developer and public inquiries, information requests, and conduct infill reviews. I'll go into these in a little bit more detail in the next few slides. However, the last bullet there on this slide, major development permits. So those include all multifamily residential development permit applications, including apartment buildings, commercial and industrial development permit applications, and institutional development permit applications. So I wanted to give a couple examples of some of the major development permit applications that that our branch deal with. So we had a change of use development permit to light industrial for OK Tire in Riel Industrial Park. That was issued earlier this year and was for a storage and distribution center. Also a 201 unit apartment building approved in Riverside earlier this year. And Riverbank Landing, which is a mixed use development, and we're expected to receive development permits encompassing 5 or 6 buildings on the site in 2022 and 2023. Next slide, please. As I mentioned in the previous slide, land use bylaw updates and amendments are also a responsibility of the development branch. As part of these regulation updates, we review all current applications in the all current regulations in the land use bylaw, conduct best practice review by determining what other municipalities do, analyze new regulations, and provide insight for council administration. So examples of this for 2022 include researching light pollution mitigation regulations, as well as how other municipalities are dealing with digital display signs. And of course, Adrian touched on it a little bit already, but a major project that the development branch is working on is the land use bylaw update. So the current land use bylaw was approved in 2005 and would benefit from an update. Although amendments to the land use bylaw have been enacted since, changing trends illustrate a need for a more flexible and responsive development regulations. So the objective of the land use bylaw update is to bring the land use bylaw into alignment with the new MDP, to update and modernize the document, and to create an accessible and web-friendly land use bylaw.
And council, just on that one, I intended to get a slot sent out on Friday, but I just didn't get there. We will be asking council for input on just kind of if there's any sort of special things that council wants us to consider as we're working through the land use bylaw. If you've heard complaints about certain aspects of the land use bylaw, or if you've heard of opportunities that you're willing to share with us, we would appreciate that. The intent right now is to be coming back to council in June for a workshop. So the sooner we can get that information, the sooner we can get it under consideration with our consultant and move forward.
Did you know we're doing a really good hard look at parking requirements in this iteration of the land use bylaw?
Yeah, parking is definitely a significant discussion.
Yeah, but for me personally, but
Less is more.
yeah. So I don't know if St. Albert's really ready to go all the way as far as Edmonton went with getting rid of their minimums, but I think I personally would be willing to entertain the conversation on that. I mean, I had an email from a resident wanted to build a secondary suite, and for her husband's two brothers who don't drive, but the parking's getting in the way.
Yeah.
So those kind of small little examples we do hear about a lot.
Yeah, and if you talk to Lori, the affordable housing liaison, I think she'll tell you a lot of the time affordability for housing projects in many ways gets tied back to parking.
Right.
Just the expense of it. So it's kind of a
And yet a lot of people that require affordable housing don't have cars and don't drive.
kind of an interesting discussion. There's a lot of levers that you can flip just with policies.
So that would be one thing I would,
Definitely looking at.
good.
Adrian West here, just a question.
Sure.
How are you going to touch on how the development process and how we build our city interacts with our engineering standards? Power in the sky, ditch versus curb and gutter, all of those things, sidewalks on both sides of the street, utilities down the middle of the roadway versus in the, how does that play out? Because that adds cost to our development within the community, right?
It can if it's done inefficiently, and you can drive those prices down if you do it right, and you can definitely add to the cost if you do it wrong. We actually have part 2 of this presentation, which is solely focused on the process, and we have development engineering in that presentation to talk about kind of what they look at when they go through when a development comes in.
Fair enough. I don't want to jump ahead. I just.
Okay. Yep. Well, if you see that we're missing something later on, let us know.
Okay,
But
fair enough. Thank you.
we're getting to there.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you. And for the next slide, major tasks of the development branch that we conduct on a daily basis include development permit applications. So as mentioned, we issue all development permit applications for everything from apartment buildings, commercial, industrial, and institutional development permits to houses, garages, decks, sheds, and home occupations, etc. We also issue compliance certificates. So these are usually associated with the sale of a property and involve the review of a real property report and determining if the property is compliant with the land use bylaw. If the property is not compliant, it can result in a development permit application being applied for instance, for a deck or a shed. Later on in the presentation, Adrian will speak to some of the numbers of applications approved and development permit and compliance certificate turnaround times. If a development permit is appealed to the SDAB, the development branch is responsible for writing an SDAB report and presenting to the SDAB and answering any questions the board may have. These meetings occur bi-weekly on Wednesday evenings. And the development branch also deals with all land use bylaw enforcement. So examples of this include dealing with situations where a building or an addition have been built without a development permit, or for example, a home occupation being in operation without a development permit, or a basement suite being used as a suite without a development permit. And the development branch also responds to developer and public inquiries on a daily basis. These inquiries can come in through the website, emails, phone calls, or counter visits. We take pride in responding in a timely fashion with accurate information to the person making the inquiry. And also the development branch also provides input and support for internal projects within the planning and development department, as well as within the organization. And as I mentioned earlier, the major project that we are working on this year is the land use bylaw update. And I will pass it on now to Scott Hubley, who will be talking about building inspection services.
Colin, does your team look at encroachments and some of the challenges around long-standing encroachments? Is that your team or somewhere else?
That would be definitely a part of what our development branch deals with. We would also work with engineering as well. It depends if the encroachment is on to private property or public property, or if it's just a setback issue where it's not necessarily an encroachment, but just building has been built too close to the property line. But yes, we do deal with those situations.
And when development permits are granted or approved, they're on a city website somewhere. They become public domain knowledge.
That is correct.
Your team that does that, or?
Yeah, that's
Yes,
correct.
there's a weekly report that's uploaded on the website that is for all the development permits issued within that week. And we're actually working on a mapping, adding mapping to the City of St. Albert website where residents will be able to click on the site and see where recent development permits have been issued on a map of city.
Okay, great.
Colin, if I can, just to touch on development permits, there's something that I kind of forgot to touch on is whether the uses are permitted or discretionary uses. So that's kind of, again, one of those things where sometimes people get interested in a development permit application, but if it is a permitted use, if it's consistent with the land use bylaw, et cetera, that means that the community's already decided that that use is appropriate and there is no public engagement, there's no appeal for that type of a use. It causes confusion because there are some uses that are discretionary uses in a land use district where we do circulate to the neighboring property owners for input to see if there are concerns that might need to be mitigated. So there's two types of land uses that Colin's group deals with on a day-to-day basis as they review their permit applications.
Great. Yeah.
I just add on the compliance review process, that's where planning interacts with engineering when it comes to encroachment. So we deal with every single file that comes through.
Okay, good.
Okay, now we'll go to building inspections.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Scott. Yeah, so you can see our org chart here. The way it breaks down, one manager, we have 6 SCOs spread across 5 disciplines. One admin control position, that's Stacy who issues our permits. And then our inspection control is Diana Gilchrist. There we go. The only part I haven't read is the responsibilities. So Safety Codes Council, our administrative compliance through the QMP, which means our quality management plan. That's a subsidiary document of the Safety Codes Act, and it describes our technical service delivery standards for each discipline. So which inspections we do on which type of buildings and the frequency. And that's it for that slide. This one just really shows that we have a separate reporting chain. In addition to being responsible to city administration, we are also responsible directly to the council. So that's the provincial arm's length organization that regulates all safety code services in the province. Just some names and a couple of positions there. We do have a separate QMP manager now. Mike Boss is our senior fire inspector. So he handles our regulatory responsibilities for fire services.
Do you, that seems like not very many people on your team, but do you inspect every building, like every home that goes up?
Yes.
You
A
do
typical
multiple
single
inspections?
family home or a condo will have about 17 or 18 separate inspections throughout the course of construction. And we do all of those.
Yeah, because your chart said you'd have to go back to that house at framing, at gas, at electrical, like.
And before,
That's just a single family house. That's not a multi-building or a, commercial building with a lot
we
of,
just have one guy doing all the work, didn't we?
what's that?
We used to just have one guy doing all the work.
I don't know how long ago that would have been. Maybe.
Scott, you have, were you done, sorry, Mike?
Yeah, no, I'm Scott or Adrian, do we, I'm shocked, sorry, I keep talking over everybody. I
No.
apologize. Scott, so do we keep I was gonna say statistics, but that's not the term. I mean, I guess, do we have timeframes where we have to be out or we try to be out at these homes to conduct these building inspection sites, or is it just we get there when we can?
No. So our technical service delivery standards in St. Albert, we can do any inspection on a 24-hour request. So in terms of construction inspections, that is probably the platinum standard within the capital region. Most municipalities don't work as quickly as we do. We've worked very hard over a very long period of time to make that our established standard. And it's one that we try very hard to maintain.
Which one is the most complicated?
Which inspection?
Yeah, I'm just curious, which would take the most time frame?
Typically, the inspections on the larger multiple occupancy commercial buildings. So, and the most stringent occupancies are always the A's and B's. So any assembly occupancy is considered an A. B occupancies are the occupancies where people lack control over their own ability to move. So B occupancies are hospitals, jails, and seniors care facilities. They are the most complex in terms of building code and requirements.
All right, interesting. Thank you.
Okay, this is just a read through. It sort of touches on the different parts and the different responsibilities. So municipal affairs, that's provincial Alberta Municipal Affairs, administers the Safety Codes Act, which establishes the legislative framework for the development of safety codes officers and the delivery of those services for municipalities, industry, and the public in Alberta. AMA is supported by the Safety Codes Council, which makes recommendations on public safety to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and accredits the municipalities, the corporations, and agencies to deliver the inspections, permitting, and enforcement services, as well as certify and train safety codes officers. Within the safety code system includes the development, interpretation, enforcement of the safety codes under the Act. The codes, standards, and administrative processes, there are actually 10 different disciplines. Safety Codes Council is established under the Act, but exists in its own legal right and is not an employee or an agent of the minister. It is considered an arm's length organization of the provincial government. Okay, and our QMP, this is the document, and it's a contract between the city and Safety Codes Council, and it outlines how we deliver services. So it is a professional agreement that shows our fulfillment of our obligations under the Act. So the Article 211, the municipality will provide the safety code services prescribed in this QMP through its own staff and accredited agencies. In doing so, it will ensure that sufficient personnel, technical and administrative, will be available to meet the expectations, obligations, and responsibilities inherent to its accreditation. This includes being able to competently deliver the safety code services required by this QMP in order to effectively administer the Act, its regulations, codes, and standards enforced in Alberta. All safety code services will be performed in compliance with this QMP in a timely and professional manner with impartiality and integrity, while working cooperatively with the citizens of the municipality to ensure compliance with the Act. And the footnote to that is that the municipality will maintain an atmosphere that supports objective and unbiased decisions. All SCOs working for the municipality will have the ability and opportunity to make independent decisions relative to compliance monitoring without undue influence of management, elected officials, or any other party. And that all that is saying is we know our residents have lots of inquiries and difficulties often arise. It just speaks to the fact that the people who work in safety codes and enforcement services are the experts in those specific disciplines. So they need to have the ability to make their decisions based on that experience and that knowledge.
Scott, for the SEO training, are they
Yes.
actually master trades themselves? Do they, or are like would you have a master electrician do your electrical codes, or do they just require a separate?
No.
Training?
Every person who inspects in a given discipline in the province of Alberta needs to be either a journeyman or a master tradesman before they start their training to become an inspector.
Okay.
So what is a safety codes officer?
Timely question.
Sorry?
I'm just a
Timely question.
I was just saying I kind of just fed into your slide here with my previous question.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So safety codes officers, we do the inspections. We're the guys that are out driving around, checking the framing and the insulation and the electrical and the gas and the plumbing and all of it. We ensure compliance with the relative codes, standards, and regulations. We're concerned with the elements of public safety that are covered under the Act. And then becoming a safety codes officer, we have 9 in total. It goes through, we're lucky because we do have several multidiscipline guys right now, mostly plumbing, gas, and mechanical. There's a lot of crossover in those areas, so it's typical for guys to carry 2 certifications.
Sorry.
Yeah, so the entrance qualifications is what I was speaking to. So the prior education credentials and work experience, that is their base ticket or their journeyman certification. And then after they've completed that and had a minimum of 3 years working as a tradesman in a senior role, they are eligible to apply to Safety Codes Council to become a safety codes officer and begin their technical courses at that point. And this just elaborates a little bit further. Typically, it's 8 to 10 years by the time you factor in journeyman certificate is 5 years in any of our base trades. Master electrician is 7. Building SCOs typically have the longest and most stringent training program. Our training program is about 60 technical courses. And it involves all of these stuff for the complex or the multi occupant large buildings. That's typically the building SCO who will look after all of those requirements. Yeah, and just goes on to say we have 4 SCOs who are multi-qualified or hold designation of powers in more than one discipline. And yeah, just we always harp on our bottom line. The department has maintained for as long as I've been at the city, we've always been a net positive contributor to the city's bottom line. So we earn more than we spend in the simplest terms.
And Scott, if I can, just to kind of elaborate on this, when I talk to my colleagues, finding quality safety codes officers, it's difficult. These are really specialized, highly trained people, a huge amount of skill set behind them. So we have a really awesome team right now, and they're very, very valuable. And as noted, they're working hard.
Adrian, if I could just jump into, I often, I'm sure Scott's team hears problem customers, right? Kind of are concerns that inspectors are late, or it's a challenge. Somebody's got a challenge, concern that something didn't get passed. But I often hear from builders and home buyers, and in particular renovators, that say we end up with a much better quality product in St. Albert than other areas because of the good, strong inspections and certifications that we have, to your point of the skill set of the people and the time it takes to get those good people here. So not only does it contribute to the bottom line, dollar wise, I think it contributes to the reputation of the quality of the housing product, whether it's built or renovated, that we end up with in St. Albert. So
sure,
it contributes to our reputation in a big way as well. So, I'm sure, like I said, Scott hears the problems, but the good side of it is what I certainly hear as well.
He only deals with happy customers.
Oh, good. They're all happy in the end. That's the objective, right?
Well, it's super valuable.
That's where we usually try to end up. Even though we may not start out in that place, we usually try to get them there.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we'll just jump into the mid-range business plan. This was approved by the department in 2021. And again, this is an administrative document. So Lake Council strategic plan or the corporate business plan, planning and development developed their own kind of plan to guide how we operate over the next 5 years. The department developed an internal mandate through a collaborative departmental process, which is as noted that planning and development ensures that St. Albert grows in a safe, responsible, and sustainable manner. Values identified as for the department are integrity, collaboration, community building, respect, and innovation. And there is a statement, like a kind of a mission statement, that as planning and development professionals, we believe in innovatively building our community while protecting its values and standards. We can be counted on to grow St. Albert in a safe, responsible, sustainable manner. As part of this development, we did an environmental analysis summary, some things that we observed that I've touched on, just having clearer website, having more online forms and tools for people to use, trying to clean up or clear up misconceptions through education, through stories, etc. Trying to consistently have political and executive application of existing plans and bylaws, and trying to help educate to make that happen, or to help that happen. Some of the challenges that we identified is face in the department, customer and council expectations. Staff can address all issues and please everyone. The amount of change and expectations of staff can create some complicated complication of existing processes and cause breaks in communication. Sometimes there's just differing application of existing plans and bylaws, and then obviously it's just the nature of the job, I guess, conflicting developer expectations. So we identified a few goals that we wanted to take on over the next few years here, and some results that we wanted to see. So goals would be staff and stakeholders understanding and performing the roles in the department, planning development, providing services that meet reasonable and evolving customer needs, and that bylaws, policies, and processes are consistently applied. And then we've got some results that kind of are guess the lagging indicators that let us know that we're making those things happen. We also have, we identified core work and commitments. So land use bylaw update, downtown area redevelopment plan, project prioritization, assisting with the green environment strategy, implementing accessibility phase 3, implementation of annexation, intermunicipal development plan with Sturgeon County, EMRB growth plan update, naming bylaw, mature neighborhood info. Mature neighborhood info got approved after this plan was adopted, but it's on there. So if everybody has the patience for it, I can, Councilor Bermansky.
I just have one question. It was mentioned for Botanica, 5 or 6 buildings. Why would it not be known whether it's 5 or 6 and what's going on there?
Well, so we do have a site plan that shows the full build out of the site. I think Colin was saying that we expect over the next 2 years, we'll expect 5 or 6 of those to come in. I think part of it is dependent on market conditions. So we know that Boudreaux Communities is coming in with 2 buildings in the very near future, and then like what they've indicated is there will be likely 2 or 3 more buildings, but we don't control their build out schedule. So I think it's just a ballpark 5 or 6 applications coming in the next 2 years.
Okay. And I just wanted to thank Scott Hubley and his team there because I'm pro trades. And I mean, if they're giving us positive return, that's great. So appreciate them a lot.
Sure. Okay, so we'll jump into some key statistics and significant projects. And I should say the planning and development, the 2021 year-end report, I think we should get it May 9th, something like that. Okay. So some of this is going to be redundant to that, but we'll just hop into it here. So this is all building permits from 2008. Obviously, life in the city didn't start in 2008. There were years before, but our reporting was a little bit inconsistent. So 2006 and 7 were actually higher years, but how things were calculated and stuff, it just works out that we only go back about 13 or 14 years right now. So what this shows, last year there were 5,825 total building and mechanical permits, which was an all-time high in that period. 1,076 building permits, permit applications, which was an all-time high. 4,742 mechanical permit applications, also an all-time high. There's a lot of speculation about why those numbers may be. You had very low interest rates. You had people that were incented to move. You had developers that maybe stood on the sidelines in 2020 and then came on strong in 2021. So there was just a confluence of a lot of factors there. If we were asked to predict what next year is, if I could do that, it probably wouldn't work.
It's lottery tickets.
It's a tough guess. Yeah, it's a tough guess. So just new construction value is up 14% from previous year. Non-residential construction, commercial construction value is up 256% from 20 to 21. And commercial industrial construction was actually down 68% from 20 to 21. So again, this is 2021 year end, just the building permit side of things. 76, so a pretty substantial change of pace there.
And you said we're getting the stats.
Yeah.
You said.
Yes, you'll get a
year-end report.
You'll get a report.
Perfect. Yeah, no, great.
Again, just the residential permits. So 212 single family residential permits were applied for, which is a high in the period of time. 80 condominiums is also high in the time.
And just saying, some of these stats should be included in our business breakfast notes. It's just good to show the business community that how busy we are.
Things are
I don't know.
Things are cracking. Yeah.
I don't know if you want to pass some of those on to Mike Erickson, some of the good positive numbers, that'd be great.
Yeah, we should literally have the, like, boards out as you walk
Yeah,
in.
maybe, yeah.
As you walk in, you could put the
Look at
boards,
us.
you
Yeah.
could put the boards out.
Send
This
it
is
to
revenue, so
Number of homes.
again, we had kind of I mean, I think when oil, a little bit after oil went to $30 a barrel, things slowed down substantially, and now it's creeping back up, and we're above the 5 and 10-year average for revenue in 2021.
So Adrian, the previous slide shows just like a building permit for commercial, but it doesn't translate that one permit could be for a massive, huge building, right?
Yeah.
So,
So just, that was a number of permits, not.
That's the number of
not the new.
permits, yeah.
yeah, it's a kind of a,
It's a good catch because, yeah, I mean, there's a couple things that the value of the permit, which does kind of capture some of that.
better, yeah.
But then also the complexity of the build and the number of inspections that go into each of these is not necessarily linear. So some of them,
Right.
like Scott said, I think the single family, I think he said 17 or something like that, all in. But some of them much, much more.
Right.
If we go to development permit applications, 1,300 development permit applications, which was the most since 2007. The turnaround was actually, well, it's down to 3.2 days, which I don't know how we can do more than that, really.
I don't think anyone expects you to do
I
better.
don't know, I'm just, it's quite remarkable. The
Yeah.
previous year was, I think, around 6 days, and I look back at the numbers in 2019, it was 7.8 days.
Yeah.
So we're shaving off days, which is a pretty substantial accomplishment.
And Edmonton's up to 60 days or, I don't know.
Can take a while. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. Sometimes when you get tied up in bureaucracy, it gets a little bit difficult. And we do try to prioritize things, and nobody's just sitting around waiting for work. Everybody's really hustling. So compliance certificate applications, 522 in 21, average around 3.5 day turnaround, and 29 subdivision development appeal board applications. We try to monitor the SDAB applications just to figure out if there are things, just as I noted, if there are common themes in some of the appeals. Lately, it doesn't seem like there's been any one thing that's jumped out. There's been a lot of little things. It's just I think.
Just decks and sheds.
Yeah, I mean, that can happen, but obviously we've been trying over time to kind of tailor our regulations if there are things that make sense to where people aren't impacted and they don't have to go to the SDAB and it doesn't impact their neighbors and stuff like that. We try to take care of those in the LUB, and now we're doing a full review. So I think one thing maybe with the development permits, as far as timing, so development department does have statutory regulations on when they do make decisions. So the province requires allows 20 days for a decision of completeness of application, and then allows 40 days to make a decision. And if you'd actually kind of get into the nuance of this, I mean, our sign permits we can do really quickly. Those are maybe a day or two. Whereas some of our complex commercial industrial applications can be 30 or 40 days. And I don't want to tell a one-sided story, but what we see a lot of, where we see a lot of the time delays is on the applicant side of things, with lack of complete information, or when we do flag something, when we do circulation with, for say, Donnie's group, for example, we don't get the information back. And so we could sit there waiting for weeks or months, literally. And then the development applicant will come in and finally give us the information. And then a day or two later, they're complaining to you guys because it's taken 6 months for their application to get processed. And so.
And that's a really good question. When they come to you or come
When
to
it was a deemed
do that. Have you put in the complete application? Because I would say 8 out of every 10, they haven't completed the application and they're already talking to us.
I haven't had a complaint about a DP up timing in years.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, we get to complain.
Yeah, no, it's, yeah.
Me too, but I always send them back to planning. But it is something that most of the time, it's at the end of the day, it's like the complaint, it's like, yeah, they gave us the wrong information, or it's not a complete application.
I have one.
That's typically what we see.
Actually, I've seen the opposite. I don't know if you are on Twitter, but Leading Edge is trying to build a facility in Edmonton and
Oh, yeah.
and one in St. Albert, and Grant Fedoric was screaming at Edmonton and telling how good St. Albert was. So I hear more positive than anything. So
That's good.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering when there's a natural break. Because Ken has to run at 12:30. I thought we could grab the salads and have a working lunch, like just,
We are very close, like we're two
okay,
slides from the end of the statistics.
okay.
If that,
And then when we do that, we'll take just 5 minutes to grab a plate and we'll come right back and keep going.
No
Okay.
more questions.
The other, I was gonna say the other one on getting back to the DPs and communication with council and stuff is, people are welcome to contact, counselors and stuff like that. But we always get back as administration, well, we talk to council and they drop that on us. And it's like, it always kind of creates this kind of almost conflict before we even start. So it just, it's how that is, we manage that internally and how you manage it, how they manage it, but it's always, we talk to council. So just,
Yeah, no,
there's commonly an attempt to leverage that.
if there's an email
Yeah.
conversation, I copy
Yeah.
city manager all the time.
just want to have it.
And I would feel fine if you said, who on council?
Oh, we do.
Doctor.
But it's still,
Yeah.
But anyways, that's just something that those things that are played out.
Good.
So just real quick, planning applications. I think we kind of raised this to council early in the last year. We had 21 subdivisions last year, which was the most that we've had since 2007. We were before council for 26 different public hearings. So we probably wore out our welcome a few times.
No, never.
The numbers are right. 709 lots were applied for in 2007, which is like a huge departure from the normal. 337 lots were registered, which is the most since 2009. It was a really busy year, as Christina mentioned. On the current planning side of things, it was really overwhelming to try to deal with that wave of applications in the first part of the year, and then obviously that kind of absorbed capacity from the long range side of the house. So again, total applications was up substantially, highest being in 14, but a very busy year. And then this is kind of what's alluded to. So our revenue from permits was total about $2.9 million in total revenue, and that includes planning, building, development, and in some cases, the engineering fees are actually incorporated in the process, just so that we don't have to have bills for every little piece along the way. But 2.9 million, which is pretty
Substantial.
I think we've talked about a lot of these major projects, internal MVP, Sturgeon annexation, migration to Prospero for our internal software. Externally, the U-Line building, OK Tire building, Riverbank Landing starting, ASPs for Northridge 2, Sherrow, Riverside Amendment, and the Ridge North Amendment. And then upcoming, we've got the land use bylaw review, St. Albert West area structure plan, mature neighborhood infill, development of more e-apply modules, potential development of 22 St. Thomas, and then external applications that are active right now, niche developments on the corner, Riverbank Landing, Citadel Muse coming in, Jensen Lakes Phase 2, St. Albert Northeast ASP.
Speaking of niche, did you want to, we should maybe reach out to him and tell him to put out his he's got a press release he's gonna do about his steel and everything, or how he's gonna say his supply chain, because people are making stuff up.
Yeah.
In the community, because he's supposed to have done that, I thought, like during March, he was putting out
I finally saw construction there today.
back on track and everything.
When I drove by.
We can reach out
There's been steals there now.
reach out with them. Yeah,
Looked like it was restarting today.
we were told mid-April that they had expected soon. So hopefully.
Yep.
And I'll just touch on one real quick, green tape initiative. So one of the things that you saw in the business plan was innovation. The group is trying to always look at things critically, see where we can improve things or stop doing things that we shouldn't do or start doing things that we should be doing. So we've worked on some software transition. We're trying to digitize different processes, working on e-apply things. Council just approved the two-tier planning approval process. Last year, council approved some signage initiatives to kind of simplify our processing of those. Did a land competitiveness analysis in 2020 to see how we stacked up regionally and where we could improve things. So overall, just a green tape focus.
They don't have anything on there.
And I think, yep, that's, if you want to take a break right here and then we've.
Perfect. Yeah.
One slide, then we'll get into the process side of things.
Okay,
So
you go first because you have to leave.
what?
Get your salad.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I just looked on the
their
niche.
website
I
to
just
see
went
if
on
I
there, yeah.
If there was a statement there that I
Nothing.
could send people.
So 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Oh.
We're taking a quick 5-minute break, guys.
Oh, look at this.
Well, let's just go for beer and wings.
back alley circulation, and they're all current.
So you're walking, getting.
Six.
Oh,
I'm young.
Ability zones.
I'm young.
All right.
I feel, no.
Like I said, I like section 90 and 91.
You can start, I'm
The
just.
book is over.
Eating up order.
Okay. Go ready to roll again.
We're good.
Those online, happy birthday to Councilor Mackay.
Yeah, you guys missed the cake.
We sang.
You know what, and the scotch, Wes. You missed the scotch.
Well, happy birthday, Ken. Happy
Yeah,
birthday, and have a scotch for me.
You know, they had the fire truck standing by while they were lighting candles.
We heard the siren.
Yeah, I know. They had somebody with a fire extinguisher right close by.
All right.
No, there's probably one.
Yeah.
So we'll get back to it. Some of the challenges and opportunities that we just kind of want to have a open dialogue about. As mentioned, we've identified kind of a lack of understanding of what planning and development does or doesn't do, or sometimes can and can't do. And I just cite the example, there was some St. Albert community Facebook forums chat this winter about timing of the Fountain Park pool, and what in the heck is the purpose of planning and development if they can't get this done? And in planning and development, we're just chuckling because we didn't have any.
That's 30 years old. I haven't touched that file in 30 years.
So obviously, being in Alberta, we struggle with the short construction season, which can then between, I guess, just the short construction season, limitations on council schedule, and the demand for that kind of probably Q4, Q1 approval so that people can meet the construction season. We typically have some pressures in that area.
I didn't find it that busy this year. Public hearings.
This year is actually, yeah, it's substantially lighter than last.
And
year.
normally March, April.
Yeah, there's still a lot of permits being issued, but I think they got a lot of entitlements approved last year, so. And then, typically at the end of the year, we deal with industry project management time overruns, which leads to a lot of requests for exemptions or exceptions to some of our requirements or processes. Question, like one thing that we really want to understand from council, like are we communicating effectively in our agenda reports and our advisories and stuff like that, or things that we can do better? And particularly if we have concerns, are you reading those concerns when you're reading agenda reports? Or are there ways that you would like us to maybe highlight messages differently? Again, just things to think about. If you can react now, feel free, but if you want to just come back on that one or think about that, those are some things that we always want to understand. I guess we do just want to make sure that we're effectively communicating to council and giving council the information they need to make good decisions.
Adrian, on the limitations of council schedule, that's a regulatory time of notice, and it's not that we're saying, no, we're too full on a schedule, or what?
We have run into some of that, definitely, like maybe more so last year than this year, where there's just a significant number of applications. It became a little bit of a challenge to try to get everything in without having just really bloated agendas based on the number of meetings. So that's just something that we've kind of seen in the past.
Adrian, when you ask about communicating concern, you just have to say it. And don't be scared to say it. You know, you might see a council that's completely supportive of a project, but we're not planners. Right? So if you really have concerns, you have to be really clear and don't worry about it. Say this, you could say, bad idea, flat out. Ken likes the term unintended consequences. But it's, in the reverse too, if you think this is a fantastic idea, then absolutely let us know.
Yeah, we can work on being direct with our messages. That's good. This ex parte kind of communication, that's, as Carrie mentioned, we see it leveraged. There's an intent to leverage those conversations regularly. It's just something that we note. We get, I met with so-and-so, or I met with a council member, and they're gonna push it through. It does cause some confusion or some hesitancy at staff level, I'll say that. So it's just to note that.
So how do we fix that?
But that's where I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Challenge them back and say who, and then we'll get a hold of the counselor and clarify.
Yeah, I think that's probably the easiest thing, I guess, is if we just call that card when it's laid. And
yeah,
I'll tell you right now, guess who has been in touch with Wes and I? David Bromley.
Oh,
Remember that name? So he wanted to have a meeting, and I said I'd like to include city manager and you, Adrian, and he said, well, let's just have a one-on-one first. So I said half an hour, no more virtual, and Wes has already met with him, but just so you know.
that's good to know.
David Bromley's back.
We'll have some.
Wes wants to comment, I think.
And then
Wes, you want to add to that?
Yeah. So Adrian, just be upfront. I was upfront with him, but he's representing a landowner, so I guess he has the opportunity to chat, if nothing else, right?
And maybe that's just the best practices for right now. If somebody does all that, play that card, then we'll just say, okay, who, and then we'll circle back and find out.
And actually, and the advice I was given by Roger Lemieux years ago was if you're a counselor and a developer asks you to meet, bring another counselor. Like, so there's always somebody to say, that's not exactly what Mike said, or whatever, right?
Mhm.
So there's a bit of a check and balance there. That was good advice from Roger.
And just apologize, I had that note and I didn't. Based on the process requirements, all 26 of our public hearings that we did last year were short-circuited. So every single one of them, between pressure from developers or whatever, we did not follow our own internal processes to get any of those to council.
All 26? Like,
What do you mean?
So we have an internal, it's an administrative process which says when you apply on this date, your council date is over here somewhere.
Yeah, okay.
You have to provide all these steps in between. And every single one of those, we were shorting our own internal review times and stuff like that to meet pressures from the development industry.
Or council.
Council,
Yeah.
executive, whatever it would be. So that's just, I think that we probably need to review our own internal process because we did do it, but we also, I think we had a couple of hiccups with a couple of them last year, and that's our concern is that process was developed in a way to make sure that we didn't miss things. And we were moving at such a pace with such volume last year in particular. Definitely probably didn't get to spend as much time as we preferred on some of those.
I mean, I'm sure the development industry loves it.
Yeah.
We're probably getting a better reputation, right?
In my experience, the day after the application is in, it's too long to get the approval, right? But they do appreciate the fact that we move things, obviously, because the time is money for them substantially, so.
I see you've got all 3 readings in one meeting.
Yes, so that's one of the questions that's come up. I think back in time, there was an opportunity for 3 readings.
Yeah, there was, yeah.
And we've gone away from that. And I'm trying to think, it was maybe 2017 when council changed some of the procedures around agenda reports and how we do things with noticing and stuff like that. That's ended up, it's added probably a few weeks to an approval process, which is only a few weeks, but if you have a short construction season or if you're up against different deadlines, can be something. So it's something that we can continue to hear about is, gee, wouldn't it be nice if we could have some truncated process or opportunity for all 3 readings? I think obviously having the neighborhood plan is a really positive step in that direction of kind of taking that out of the need for council to weigh in and go through that formal process when we can turn that out internally. And then I think, just one thing that we deal with a lot is just the customer expectation versus staff levels. I think there's a really high quality of service provided in the city. And I think then there's also a perception that just as a government employee, you're just sitting, waiting with an empty desk to take on whatever that person's interest is at the time. And so we always struggle with that. And that's part of the nature of the beast. So, but it does kind of switch us sometimes from that important to urgent activity. So we end up dropping kind of these long-term projects and picking up stuff that's a little bit more, we've got somebody that's loud right now that we have to deal with. And then just, and that just kind of goes to reflect the lack of excess capacity.
But Adrian, we're dealing with the same developers over and over and over again. It's not like, there's of those 26, there would have been, they're not 26 different developers. You would think they would understand the process, and they've been working in the city for years, right? It's not like we're telling them anything new.
Yeah, sometimes people miss their deadlines and then they still want to have the city, help
Make up the slack.
Make up the slack, yeah.
Make up their slack.
Their slack.
Yeah.
And in other circumstances, the developer will have changed their own staff over time, so it's a new person that.
Oh.
Right?
You have a developer and they could be working with 20 builders. And if they're not doing what they should be doing in their processes through the bank and everything in place and approvals, those builders then put a lot of pressure on the developer. And that's where the problem should lie. But the developer asks the city to try and bail them out.
Okay.
That's what, that's the, that comes in.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay,
And
so.
sometimes it is the city's fault too. But it is really.
Every once in a while, something does slide. Generally, we try to hold up a pretty high level of service. Any questions on that? I can just provide, all of our stuff is on the webpage, and the public participation standards are an important one to kind of help understand what we do when we require engagement. We've got the planning primer, which provides a bit more of this kind of information in detail. And then we do have like initiatives, major initiatives that the city has ongoing, or even major applications that we're aware of. We put information about those on the city webpage and then on the Cultivate the Conversation webpage if engagement is merited. So things like universal accessibility is on the webpage, or 22 St. Thomas. There's information for that type of stuff there. Again, just trying to help people help themselves understand what's going on in the city and how it all works. And if we're okay here, then I'll jump into the next one. Oh.
Thanks, Adrian. Just, I, as I've been sitting here listening, just one of the things I think that's key to people in our community is just having access to information. And this is just very heartening to see these sorts of things come out. But like the Citadel fire and what was happening and how that's getting resolved, niche developments, those sorts of things, that's what I get asked about all the time. And just to be able to point them to, say, to the website, here's the information, here's what's happening, help yourself. And because in the absence of that sort of stuff, it's like in the dark, mushrooms grow, and so does misinformation. So I'm just happy to see these sorts of things come out. Thank you.
And it's a continual work and progress for us, but we're trying to do better to make it easier for folks. Thank you. Councillor Bermansky?
Yeah, Adrian, it's just when you're mentioning, that you're trying to process everything and get, everything done in good order and you're very stretched for time. Why are you focusing on the land use bylaw at this particular time when there's so many other things going on? And what's your, is there something immediate that's needed in that would, that's the goal you're trying to achieve is what I'm asking.
Yeah, so the land use bylaw, and I don't know if Colin wants to jump in or not, but basically, following the approval of the municipal development plan, we wanted to make sure that we did a review of the land use bylaw to make sure that the regulations that we had in place were implementing the policies within the MDP. So we didn't want to have gaps or inconsistencies between those two documents. In addition to that, I think we did a substantial residential review a few years ago to kind of help move the needle as far as facilitating residential development, different types of products and stuff in the city. And it's been on our list for a long time. We've heard regularly that there are more opportunities either to consolidate non-res, either commercial or industrial districts, or to expand uses among those districts because the uses would not be contradictory to each other or things like that. So it's been something that we've heard from industry for a while. And based on the approval of the annexation and the demand for or desire to grow our non-residential business base and the MDP, between those couple of things and just kind of the overall general sentiment that we want to make ourselves as competitive as possible in those areas. That was why we pushed forward the land use bylaw amendment in order to find ways to kind of move levers a little bit quicker, easier, if it doesn't negatively impact the community.
I was just concerned that, you're stretched for time on everything else you're explaining and to take the time out to do that may not be the correct time, but I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. And I see Christina is there as well.
I just wanted to expand a little bit on that as well. One of the reasons why we need the land use bylaw changed is also because that's part of the reason why we're getting so many applications, is that the bylaw is not reflecting what the development industry needs as well. So we're trying to, instead of getting these as a piecemeal application in, last year, we took, I think, about 3 or 4 land use bylaw amendments that weren't associated with plans. It's actually improvements or changes as requested through development. So if we can get rid of some of those, that'll also help create capacity.
Okay. I'm going to just bring up my the next presentation, which is more about the process, and we'll try to get through this as quick as we can here. Oops. It wouldn't come up in the normal PowerPoint share, so I'm just going to do it this way. All right. So this is more of the process side of things. So as we mentioned, the reason that we have engineering here is just because how close we work with engineering on a day-to-day basis as we go from raw ground to the built form. So we have relationships with transportation, development engineering, CAP projects, infrastructure planning, and asset management. All of us kind of work together to make things go here. And Christina is going to now talk through the rest of the process here.
So good afternoon. I've also got Tanya Hines, Jonathan Reed, Scott Hubley, and Colin Kriviak here to present as well. So the Municipal Development Plan is the document that is required by the Municipal Government Act, and it provides the high-level direction for growth and development within the city. Last year, planning worked with communications to develop this information video, which you can see on the website, and I'll just try to, Adrian, can you click on it and see if it'll play for us? It might not, so we might.
I'm having, oh, here we go, maybe. Okay. Kicked me out.
Well, if it doesn't work, that's fine. I would recommend going to the Planning Initiatives page, and you can.
Flourish outlines long-term.
Right, yeah. That's okay.
Yeah, it is found on our Planning Initiatives page, and it talks about how the plan was developed and growing to 100,000 people. This map that you see here, though, now includes the annexation lands, and this will enable space for approximately 175,000 people. However, Flourish general policy and timelines only look at 100,000 and approximately 25 years of growth. To make growth projections for 50 to 75 years, which is what the 150,000 people would translate to, just isn't feasible, as there will be significant changes to how we live, which we just can't comprehend today. Next slide. Flourish was based off of the community vision and pillars of sustainability. Flourish is a pivotal document, not only for planning and development, but also to align other city departments and their plans to the direction found within Flourish. It is hoped that this will help keep decision-making consistent across the organization. The MDP has key performance measurements and indicators which will determine how effective the policies are or if they need refinement. And Adrian, can you click? Within planning and development, unlike other departments, the MDP will inform our mid-range plans, which in planning are our area structure plans. Other departments would have master plans, like the transportation master plan, etc. Next slide. Area structure plans plan new neighborhoods in undeveloped areas. They contain policy direction for land use, density, transportation, servicing, parks, recreation, community activities, the sequence of development, design standards, and more. And so when people talk about the quality of life within St. Albert, it does come down to how we design these area structure plans. The ASP must be consistent with the Municipal Development Plan, and it is the first plan that provides a refinement of the neighborhood layout. We're still on the back. Next, thank you. This substantial document includes various supporting reports to ensure that the plan can be implemented. It is important that an application with all of these documents is submitted. And this is kind of going back to what is a complete application, and where sometimes we hear that a plan has been submitted, but if there's key questions within this document, it is still, administration will still consider it not complete. These requirements are posted on the website and are included within the terms of reference for area structure plans. Next slide. As administration will not bring forward to council a recommendation without a complete application, and providing answers to the development questions that administration has, the review for an area structure plan can take a long time. For minor amendments, it'll take approximately 6 months, but new or major amendments can take up to 2 years if you include the pre-application stage. It is important that none of the outlined steps are skipped, as each of these timelines are important to ensure mandated processes such as circulation and advertising enable, and we're able to enable our best recommendations. Next slide. At the area structure plan level, engineering is looking to see how the neighborhood will function. It looks at how the transportation network is planned and to be developed and what types of roadways are required within the neighborhood to provide an adequate level of service. Engineering looks to see how the proposed roadways will connect to and integrate within the existing transportation network. And so if Adrian keeps, I think he clicks 2 more times, you'll see all the different types of engineering reports that we've got. Engineering will review the service design reports to see what type of infrastructure is proposed and whether any offsite levy infrastructure is planned or required to support this development. Next slide. The land use bylaw is a council-approved document that regulates the details of land uses, and it is required under the Municipal Government Act. The land use bylaw is a highly detailed set of rules used by planning and development to identify land uses and development that occurs on a specific site. Each district identifies compatible land uses and has requirements for lot size, building type and height, building setbacks, site coverage, densities, parking, landscaping, signage, and other elements of the built form. The goal of the land use bylaw is to design standards which enable compatible and safe development. Right now on this slide is an example of how the land use bylaw is written. So you can see the difference between permitted and discretionary uses and some of examples of the regulation. If Adrian clicks again, this is a standard redistricting map, and this is what you'll see at council. It provides the area in which this district will apply, and it does not need to identify individual parcels. This is a further step, and as it goes to council and through public hearing, this is also another opportunity for the public to provide input on a change. As long as it's consistent though with the area structure plan, administration will recommend it for approval. During the land use bylaw reviews, engineering will typically review the application to see if it aligns with the area structure plan and to determine if the development will trigger any large infrastructure needs upon subdivision. Next slide.
Christina,
yes.
When does school sites get allocated? At what stage in the process? Is that right back at the ASP?
Yes, we generally identify the land at ASP, but at subdivision, you will get the actual parcel designed and indicated at that point.
Okay.
Yeah. So subdivision is the process of creating new parcels of land for development. Subdivisions are regulated by the land use bylaw and the Alberta subdivision and development regulations. Applications can be simple and include only a few lots. And if Adrian clicks again, or they can be complex and contain several hundred lots with various land use districts applied to them. So this example, you'll see that there's R1 and RXL, no, just RX. And then there's, I think, an R3A site and a park site. So those are all different land use designations. So the next slide. Subdivision is a two-part process, and it contains the conditional subdivision approval, and then the subdivision must be endorsed. Conditional approval is the process of determining what conditions will need to be met to subdivide the lot. Adrian, if you click again, the endorsement process confirms that these conditional conditions have been met. So a decision regarding conditional approval of the subdivision must be made within 60 days by the city, as per the MGA. The subdivision applicant has 1 year to complete the conditions of subdivision and to apply for subdivision endorsement. Once the property is subdivided, a development permit can be applied for. This process requires significant coordination between planning and engineering, and the coordination will inform the subdivision conditions and ensure that they are completed during the endorsement. Standard subdivision conditions include that all property taxes must be paid, that the subdivision lots conform to the minimum standards identified within the land use bylaw, that there is access to all new subdivided lots, that the development agreement is complete, and this is run by the engineering group, and that all offsite levies are paid. And so now I'm going to hand this off to Tanya, and she's going to continue on with this presentation.
Okay, thanks, Christina. So during this subdivision application, engineering will review the proposed plan and identify any items that need to be addressed so the development can proceed. These requirements will form some of the conditions in the subdivision approval. So some of the conditions engineering may require would be the need to confirm whether there's existing infrastructure or whether the existing infrastructure has enough capacity to add these extra lots. If there isn't enough capacity, engineering will determine whether offsite levy infrastructure is required to be constructed, or if there are any offsite infrastructure improvements that need to be built at the same time as the subdivision, and this would be to support that. As an example of an offsite improvement may be a developer's stormwater pond. Next slide.
Tanya, can I interrupt just a second here?
Sure.
So is it you or where are the standards say a new development comes on and we're providing like fiber services to each lot or upgraded electrical to each lot to support electric cars? How does that play out?
I think that would be a little bit more in the engineering standards, which would be part of the development review. And we're going to talk a little bit about those. And so maybe John can touch on that when we get to that part.
Fair enough.
That's okay. Okay.
Yep.
Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the main functions of IPAM, so that's infrastructure planning and asset management, so that's me, is to support the planning and development process. So when an application is circulated, various staff from development engineering, transportation, and IPAM will review the application, and we identify any special concerns or requirements that need to be addressed to support the application. So IPAM acts as the main point of contact with planning, and that's for our MDP, our ASP, LUB, and our subdivision conditions. IPAM plays a minor role when it comes to development permit reviews, as they tend to be single and site-specific applications, and most of engineering's requirements will be addressed through the development engineering branch. Next slide. So the requirement for the developer to enter into a development agreement with the city is almost always one of the subdivision approval conditions. This is the time that IPAM, development engineering, and transportation work most collaboratively. IPAM prepares all the development agreements and makes sure everything is in compliance with city policies in the offsite levy bylaw when offsite levy infrastructure is being constructed as part of a subdivision. Development engineering, along with utilities and transportation, reviews all of the engineering drawings to ensure they comply with municipal engineering standards and other relevant industry regulations and standards. And the development agreement itself is a contract between the developer and the city, and it defines what infrastructure and improvements the developer is committing to construct. The DA defines how much offsite levies must be paid with the development. They set out the amounts and terms for required security, establishes maintenance periods, determines whether there are any excess capacity payments owing or to be collected in the future. And once the development agreement is executed by both the developer and the city, the developer is authorized to begin construction. Next slide.
Just go back to that other slide, Tanya.
Sure.
So on excess capacity, that means that if we have to build a bigger sewer pipe to work with one developer, we obviously want to build it for wherever the future that it's going. Is that
so?
But that developer would only say, "Hey, I only want to pay for 25% of the size of that pipe. The other 75% is you're building it for a future development further down the line." Is that kind of how it works?
So because the city has an offsite levy program, we don't have a lot of excess capacity anymore, but typically on occasion, we've got a few, like you might have, I'm going to use Riverside as an example. if you've had multiple developers in one section, and so everybody doesn't need all separate infrastructure, but somebody might only need, let's say they need a pipe that's 300 millimeters and they only need to build it 5 meters deep. But if they build it an extra 100 meters bigger or millimeters bigger, the pipe, and go an extra meter depth difference, then it can service more land. And so what they'll do is they'll put in a claim, well, not a claim, they just submit costs for that extra capacity. So it's only the difference, sort of the amount they're not using. And then what will happen is the city will keep track of that. And when that other developer comes in, we'll say, we act as a third party in that instance. And what we'll do is say, oh, you owe this much money for this pipe that went in at this time. And then we collect the money at the time of development agreement, and we just pay it back to the developer. So it's a little bit different than our offsite levy program. So, but because we use that for more of our big infrastructure where we're building in that extra capacity for the bigger projects, we don't have as much of that anymore in the city as we used to.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. Okay, so I think we have to skip back. Oh, we're on slide 15. Sorry, nope, we're good. Sorry.
Database.
Okay.
Double and triple backed up.
So IPAM is responsible for providing the response to planning when a subdivision endorsement application is received. So IPAM will work with the development, engineering, and transportation, and we want to ensure that the conditions have been met. So that means, like, if we have critical infrastructure that's been installed or needs to be functioning before those lots come online. And we'll also ensure that any of the land registration documents the city has an interest in, which includes all of our utility right-of-ways and our restrictive covenants, that they meet our requirements. And so those get registered at the same time. Next slide, and I think that's Colin.
Yes, thank you, Tanya. So once a subdivision has been endorsed and a parcel has been created at land titles, a development permit application can be issued on that parcel. So this slide specifically shows the process for major development permits, for instance, apartment buildings or commercial buildings. The first step is a pre-application meeting where the submission requirements are provided to the applicant, and any questions about the process and timelines can be answered by administration. Next, the applicant applies for the development permit. And as per the MGA, and as mentioned by Adrian earlier, the development branch has 20 days to determine whether the application is complete. However, given that the applicant has already been part of a pre-application meeting, most of the time the application is complete. If it is not, the development officer will reply to the applicant stating what the deficiencies are. Once the application is complete, the development officer conducts an internal circulation and reviews any comments that are received. And based on that circulation, the applicant completes any revisions that may be required. At this stage, the development officer issues a development permit and must do so within 40 days from the acceptance of the complete application as per the MGA. So the same process applies for development permit applications for single detached dwellings. However, the pre-application meeting is not required, nor is the internal circulation, as they are more common applications and not as complicated. However, all the other steps remain the same, and our MGA requirements are, of course, the same as well. And I'll pass it on now to Jonathan Reed to talk about the next part of the process, including the construction completion certificate.
Thanks, Colin. In the essence of time, I'm trying to kind of condense this as much as I can, but I do have some questions already noted from council there. Some of those might be better served in the next meeting that we have, workshop scheduled, as I'll go into further detail on a lot of these different items. So the development engineering team reviews the project's civil drawings and ensures compliance with the requirements in the municipal engineering standards. This is the same that kind of happens as well on the development agreement side, but it's a little more intense on the development agreement side. We also conduct on-site inspections throughout the course of construction to ensure that they're meeting the requirements that they've outlined in their drawing packages. So this constitutes on anything tying into city infrastructure as our main goal, to ensure that whatever they do, they are not affecting the services from any other of the users in the system. So that's kind of what we go with there. If we can go to the next slide, please. During subdivision construction, which is kind of what I was alluding to with regards to the development agreement, We do on-site inspections throughout the process to ensure that they are meeting their obligations as depicted or as written into the development agreement. And then as the construction completes, we do formal inspections to ensure that what they've done has met their agreement requirements. And then we require any successful inspection with all relevant backing material. So that would include video camera of all the pipes that are included in the subdivision, any of the compaction tests for any of the backfill going in, and some of those other items. And then we can issue that construction completion certificate. During that whole process, as Tanya mentioned earlier, we do hold security from the developers at that time, and that security is held during the course of construction to ensure that the developer meets their obligations. Sometimes during the course of construction, the developer may either go default, go bankrupt, or some other nature. And we use these funds or hold these funds in the intent that we would be able to pull that money out and use it to complete that construction to the requirements of the development agreement. So once they've done their construction completion, we reduce that security amount, and we reduce it by half at that time. And then from there on, we will go from there. So I think that's it on the construction completion side. So going over to the building permit side, and I'll be back for final acceptance.
Hi again. Yeah, so building permits, normally building inspection services will attend the pre-application meetings. Just the earlier we can be a part of the process, the better it is in the long run, both for us and the applicants. Plan examination and permit review, even for large complex projects. If we have a good application, we're 5 to 9 business days to review and issue those permits. Next slide. Yeah, so the quality of the application is what will determine our time to issue that permit. Inspections for all 5 disciplines are booked on a 24-hour notice, and all services are delivered within 1 business day.
And I'm back. So with the development agreement, and mentioned once again by Tanya earlier, there's a warranty period. So the warranty period is the time between the construction completion and the final acceptance. So that's what we determine as the timeline for that. So with that still remains under warranty from the developer. So they deal with things like snow removal at that time, or any of the other kind of maintenance items that might come up. So let's say lawn mowing or seeding or watering or anything that goes for our landscape crew, they're responsible for that. So after that warranty is expired, another formal inspection is conducted. And at that time, we identify any sort of deficiencies or concerns that still do not meet our municipal engineering standards, and we have them rectify those items at that time prior to issuance of the FAC. Once they've been given FAC, that's kind of the last hurrah, or the last kick at the can for getting them to do any work on our behalf. After that, it's all transferred over to our public operations teams, and they deal with it from there on. And that includes any sort of snow removal, landscaping, mowing the lawns, anything like that. So we usually have that time for things like settlement or any sort of work that was done substandard that can arise over that time. We're not guaranteed to catch everything, but we try and catch as much as we can. After that FAC is completed, then we release the remaining security for that development, as I mentioned earlier, to ensure that everything has been executed or completed as per our executed agreement under the development agreement. And that's kind of the end of the process.
And I just wanted to, I apologize, I cut Scott off on his speaking notes, but he had just had a note that going back to that whole quality of the application, we've actually had permits where people have taken 5 months to actually meet the code requirements. So a lot of back and forth and disagreement about what they can do, but they're still not meeting the code. And it's cost them basically, construction season or something like that. So it's just something that happens, but that one day booking for inspections is, like Scott said, it is the platinum level of service. So anyway, that's kind of the end of the presentation. We just wanted to, again, hopefully provide some information so that you guys have an understanding of what we do and why we do it, and where certain authorities are and stuff like that. And on the 16th, Donnie will lead the presentation more on the engineering side of things and a little bit more.
And we can go in depth on some of these processes as well, if we have any questions.
I do have a question in terms of the stormwater ponds. As I understand it, the developer has to give an allocation of land, both for parks and for stormwater ponds. Do the two play into each other? Like, is the green space around a stormwater pond go into the calculation of how much park they have to give, or are they two totally separate?
Right now, the storm area is deducted out of the developable land. So
they have to give a percentage of the developable land, right?
Yeah,
on the
so
park, yes.
there's, I guess,
For
there's
MR,
the
yeah.
high water mark, and then there's the setback. There's a municipal reserve dedication requirement is 10%. We take out that stormwater area, but then sometimes there's a component, they do get like partial credit for some of the area around that has the PUL in it. Because typically that ends up being a trail or something around that stormwater facility. I guess the alternative would be, we've heard from different developers that if they didn't get at least partial credit for that, then they wouldn't provide
Trails.
that room for the trail.
Okay,
And you can
yeah.
add a little bit more.
Another good question.
Is online.
Developer's fault for that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say that, yeah, the PUL, they don't get, for the actual storm credit, they don't get anything that's designated PUL, they don't get MR credit for. But I think what Donnie was alluding to was you were just talking about how we calculate the offsite levies, Donnie. That's,
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
okay. It's deducted out of the net developable area.
Oh, okay.
The storm area.
Okay.
But you have to allow in case there's a big storm, right?
yeah, they have to, it's just basically the reason they're out of the levies is the developers have a hard time recouping those costs. So they asked if they, and for their financing. So basically they pay the same amount of levy, it's just on a tiny bit smaller land. But the PUL designation is to, it incorporates the storm function. So there's no municipal reserve associated with that because it's providing a public utility function. So the MR, but there are some parts of the land that may get a little bit of an MR credit, I think is what Adrian was suggesting.
Okay.
Yes, good question. All right. So what's on May 12th? Is it 16th? It's all engineering and
Engineering 101, and definitely, as you've seen, we have so much interaction and plan to jump into clarify some of the questions as well.
Is that where we could put Dean on the hotspot?
Have
Yeah,
Dean,
just-
absolutely.
We'll be there, yeah.
What would you call him?
The Chick Show?
The Chick Show.
Rhoda, did we answer your questions about process?
What was that,
Your
Adrian?
phone?
I said, did we answer your questions? You had questions about process. I was just checking in to see if we kind of addressed those process questions enough.
That's a nod, I guess.
Yep, that's good for me.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Good start.
So part 2 on the 16th.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Looking forward to those engineering questions. All right, thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye.